Hello everybody, Xword64 back again today with another Nintendo Switch 2 video. Today's video is going to be a bit of a different one compared to normal, as I'm going to be talking about my time attending the Nintendo Switch 2 experience in Toronto. I'll go over my general thoughts on the event itself, along with the games that I played and what I wish could have been there. So with that out of the way, let's get right into it. In regards to the structure of the event itself, the play session lasted for 2 hours and 20 minutes. It was pretty linear at first, but then after the first 40 minutes or so, you were free to pretty much do as you please. After registration, you were placed into 4 groups for the first game, which was Mario Kart World, followed by Donkey Kong Bananza, and lastly, once your session with Bananza concluded, you entered the free play zone, which allowed you to play up to 13, really it was 16, titles. Any attendees were allowed to record their own footage, which of course I managed to do, but if you were recording, you needed at least your shoulder in frame. Now, where this was my first time recording footage for any form of event like this, the footage may look a little scuffed, so I do apologize for that. And in regards to the footage I did record, I only ended up recording for Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bananza, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, as those were the only ones I really wanted to get footage of. As for the games available to play at the event, you had, of course, Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bananza, although they were only available to play at the beginning of the event. Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, Zelda Breath of the Wild, and Zelda Tears of the Kingdom Nintendo Switch 2 editions, Kirby and the Forgotten Land plus Starcross World Nintendo Switch 2 edition, Super Mario Party Jamboree Nintendo Switch 2 edition, Nintendo Switch Online Classics Nintendo GameCube, which featured Wind Waker, F-Zero GX, Super Mario Strikers, and Soul Cal 2, Drag X Drive, Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, Hades 2, Street Fighter 6, Split Fiction, Hogwarts Legacy, and lastly, Civ 7. The majority of the playable demos were scripted and timed demos. Kirby and Metroid had you play through what seemed to be the first levels or first missions of each respective title, then once you completed that level, the demo would finish. Mario Party Jamboree had 2 dedicated booths to the game. One was to showcase a handful of minigames using mouse mode, while the other was to showcase game modes and minigames using the brand new camera. Once you registered at the main booth, you received a lanyard with a game passport on it. If you played at least 6 different titles in the free play zone, you could cash it in at the end of the event and receive a Nintendo Switch 2 themed backpack. Pretty nice little prize, but I'll discuss my thoughts on it later. Now, Mario Kart World was undoubtedly the #1 thing I wanted to play alongside Kirby. Once you were situated, you could play a transition portion from one randomly decided track to another. I'm pretty certain I ended up playing the transition from Starview Peak to Sky High Sunday as a part of the Star Cup, as near the end of the intersection, I did 1 lap around Sky High Sunday. After playing on the main screen, I was able to try out the fully attached handheld unit and play the transition from Whistle Stop Summit to DK Spaceport as a part of the Mushroom Cup. After our little warm-up at that booth against computer players, they swiftly moved our group towards the next Mario Kart World setup dedicated to Knockout Tour. There we waited in a free roam section on 3DS Wario Shipyard until everybody was situated. One thing that took me off guard was the music that played during this section, and I guess just the entire Mario Kart section. You won't be able to hear it in the video, but I remember hearing a remix of Bob on Battlefield and Slider from Super Mario 64 playing, as well as the Comet Observatory from Mario Galaxy. I'm unsure if it was in-game audio itself, or if it was just background music that they were playing over the speakers at the event. Either way, I do know that Mario Kart World does feature a large amount of remixes spanning the Mario franchise, so it'll be interesting to see and I guess hear what else will be implemented. The Knockout Tour race was on the Cherry Rally, going from GCN Peach Beach to DS Desert Hills. In regards to how the game feels, it feels absolutely incredible, and I'm dead serious. The graphical leap from 8 Deluxe to World is very noticeable, and it overall just plays extremely smooth. It feels like a much more polished 8 Deluxe, and that's not to shame 8 Deluxe, because it itself is extremely polished, but World just feels that much better. They unfortunately had smart steering and auto acceleration enabled by default, with no way to disable it. So that was slightly irritating, but I understand why they did it for new or even younger players that are struggling with the game. During my time, I ended up using 3 different bikes, and surprisingly, none of them had inside drifting. They were all outside drifting bikes. And, you know, where I'm analyzing a bunch of footage for the game, I imagine that I would have come across if inside drifting bikes did return in World, but I quickly came to that realization that I actually don't know if inside drifting is back. If somebody out there does know, please tell me in the comments, because I'm just that uncertain if inside drifting is back. It really took me off guard playing the game. I think Knockout Tour is easily going to be one of the best experiences to play online at the moment. The gameplay is very chaotic, and anything can change on the dime. For the first section, I had a pretty small lead, and I guessed somewhat decent items, but once I got hit by, I think it was a red shell, I was sent back to like 13th, 14th, and never really had a chance to catch back up. While coming back, I managed to miss 3 sets of item boxes and ended up getting eliminated in the first section. I wasn't too pleased. Afterwards, I was able to spectate the remaining 5-ish minutes of gameplay, where I watched as one Shy Guy player and another Mario player fought for first place. I never got any gameplay of it because it was a little difficult to record somebody else's or even my own screen properly without one of the employees telling me not to just like directly record the screen itself. However, watching those two fight back and forth to get first was very engaging. Me and the employee that assisted me at the booth, we were both having a laugh over the competition, so shout out to that guy. But yeah, I have really high hopes for Mario Kart World. I think any form of multiplayer will be extremely enjoyable, both local couch co-op or online. Knockout Tour is extremely engaging both when you're in and out of a race, and trust me when I say that Knockout Tour is really gonna shine and will end up being one of the best game modes the game has to offer, alongside free roam of course, which I do wish I had more time to play. Next up was the demo for Donkey Kong Bananza. Once we were situated at our booth, we had 20 minutes to get as far as you could in the demo. The demo began with the opening of the game itself, walking you through the opening acts of the story, introducing you to the setting of Donkey Kong in the mines, along with basic tutorials for the game's controls. I think I'm confident in saying that this is undoubtedly a Nintendo EPD8 developed title. For those who don't know, that's the division of Nintendo of Japan that primarily focuses on 3D Mario titles. It was fairly obvious to me by not only how DK controls, but also the UI, the NPCs guiding you towards your next objective, the tutorials for DK's movement in the bottom right corner, which is exactly how Odyssey handled its tutorials for Mario's movement, the option to choose between a normal or assist mode, but also just the core level design. Like, of course, there's no question that DK controls extremely well and definitely takes inspiration from Odyssey, but from the 2 levels that I ended up playing, it really just does feel like a brand new 3D Mario. The first segment of the demo was the opening tutorial, as I said previously, and it was a small section of the mines with not a whole lot to explore. It really just served as a way for the player to get comfortable with DK's moveset, which definitely took a minute to adjust to. Being able to break the majority of the terrain, with some exceptions, is such a brilliant concept. Now, during this segment, and like the very opening moments of the segment, there was a Nintendo media rep, or what I presume to be a Nintendo media rep, that kind of just pulled up alongside me and began to take a couple of pictures of myself and the other players at my booth, or like around my booth. So my gameplay during that segment was a little weird, because in my peripheral, I was so focused on this dude taking pictures. Then immediately after that guy left, the employee who guided me to the booth and the guy who was kind of just like looking over my booth came up to me and told me, yeah, if you're lost, just follow the arrow and go towards the next objective. I know my gameplay was definitely scuffed for a minute there, but I know what I'm at. This isn't my first 3D platforming rodeo. It made for a really funny interaction. The ending of the segment introduced the Voidco staff members, which set the picture for the story moving forward. The next section was a bit of a jump cut to a little later in the game, taking place on the Lagoon layer. We had Odd Rock as our companion during this section, which allowed you to use the L button to sing and open hidden doors. This section was larger and much more open to explore. Once I found the area's map, it was a little surprising to see just how much there was to explore on the sub-level. There was a main objective to progress, but as soon as I started it, my time with the demo concluded. I mostly spent my time just exploring the upper region of the area, taking in the views, and finding 2 hidden challenge rooms. Although I will say exploring is really going to be interesting, because as I was searching just on a wall, I used R to collect some banana chips, and it revealed the location of a crystal banana. So secrets are going to be scattered everywhere in this game. You'll have to search like every nook and cranny just to find something. And briefly speaking on those secret areas that I found, they function similar to the Captor rooms in Odyssey, where once you enter the room, you had to complete a platforming challenge and explore the room to find upwards of 2 main collectibles. In Bananza, however, these rooms feature up to 3 objectives you can collect. And there was also a combat-focused challenge room where I needed to defeat a certain number of enemies in order to collect a crystal banana. In these rooms, I found out that dying causes you to lose currency, or I guess the banana chips, instead of lives. Lives, which, oddly enough, is another returning feature from Odyssey. I think Bananza will end up being a very special experience when it comes out in July. I think those who played Odyssey will absolutely adore this game, as it takes a lot of cues from it, both in the way that DK controls and the level design. It may be a bit daunting at first due to how big the scope of the game may seem, but I think that the sub-levels feature enough to keep your attention span from wandering off too far, while not being extremely overbearing. They're kind of like the cave systems from Pikmin 2 and Pikmin 4. I just wish that I had more time to play it. After our time with Mario Kart World and DK Bananza came to a close, we were then moved to the final area of the event, which is where you would spend the remainder of your time slot in, the free play zone. This area is where your gameplay passport came into play, as you were tasked with going around to play at least 6 titles in order to obtain some merchandise. Out of the 16 titles present, I only ended up playing 7, those being Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, Super Mario Party Jamboree, F-Zero GX, which was a part of the Nintendo Switch Online Classics Nintendo GameCube, Drag X Drive, and Hades 2. With Metroid Prime 4, I had the option to play either twin stick or mouse mode, and I chose mouse mode just to see how well it would control. And yeah, it was certainly strange. The employee there didn't really seem too interested in anything to do with Metroid or the event itself, really. It's like he kind of just wanted to push people to play the game, advertise it, and then move on. He dragged me in as I was walking past the booth, kind of like, hey, you want to play Metroid? Or like, you like Metroid? Then come try out the booth. And at the end, he advertised, like, he never even asked my thoughts on the event, or on the game itself, sorry. He was like, yeah, make sure, you buy Metroid Prime 4 Beyond for Nintendo Switch 2, and then he just walked on. But enough about that guy. As for the game itself, well, I don't really know what to say. I've barely had enough experience with the Metroid Prime series to really comment, so I feel like I wouldn't really do it justice. It was certainly a bit of a shock to see this game running at 4K 120 frames. It honestly just looks like one of the most visually impressive games Nintendo has ever released, and it probably will be. I'm pretty sure I played the opening segment of the game too. It started when Samus lands on this brand new planet and begins to enter one of the Federation's buildings that's currently under attack, eventually concluding in a fight against Abrax and the encounter with Sylux before the demo concluded. Mouse mode is slightly uncomfortable, and it takes a minute to adjust properly. I'm right-handed, so for the controller itself, I had my thumb resting on the analog stick, then my pointer finger was on the R button, my middle finger was on the ZR button, and then the rest of my fingers kind of just acted as support to hold the controller properly. That was my first time using mouse mode, and when I played the other demos that featured it, it did feel a little more natural, but I can see somebody preferring twin stick over mouse mode for Prime 4, especially if you used a twin stick. And to continue that same thought on mouse mode, Drag X Drive and Super Mario Party Jamboree feature some pretty fun experiences using mouse mode. I already know that I absolutely will not be picking up Drag X Drive, but from what I did play of it, it was fun, I'll give it that. The booth was completely vacant when I showed up, and the 2 employees explained to me as I sat down how it's a 6-player 3v3 game, so if I wanted to play, I basically had to wait for 5 others to show up, which of course I ended up doing. It gave me time to practice and learn the weird control schemes, as you can only play Drag X Drive in mouse mode. I don't really have a whole lot to say on this game either though, like it made for a fun 15 minutes where my 2 teammates kinda just carried my ass. We all looked pretty funny moving both Joy-Cons rapidly back and forth. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, Super Mario Party Jamboree had 2 booths. One was to showcase a handful of minigames using mouse mode, and the other to showcase the camera. I only ended up playing the mouse mode booth. Often when I looked around, the camera booth always had people actively playing, so I went towards the other booth as there were just many more booths dedicated to mouse mode. I think there were only 2 camera mode booths, but there was like 4 to 5 mouse mode booths. The setup itself featured 6 minigames that utilized mouse mode, but for the minigames that I did play, they were pretty fun, I won't deny. I played Shell Hockey, Stuffy Stacker, Baba Makeover, Bowser Filter, and ended with Totally Electric Escape. I think that some of these minigames could have been created using the Joy-Con's IR pointer rather than with mouse mode, but to be fair, using mouse mode definitely adds to the difficulty and I guess the overall fun value, so it evens itself out. Zelda Tears of the Kingdom was pretty well the same. I played a small segment of the Zora's Domain main quest with Sidon and the boss fight against the Sludge Lake. The graphical and frame rate improvements are definitely going to make both Tears and Breath of the Wild phenomenal to play through once more. I never spent much time at this booth because it mostly served as a please come look and see these improvements and then move on. I never even got to try the new Zelda notes, although where you can only play Zelda notes on your phone, I can't say I'm too surprised they never had 2 phones set up for each game. F-Zero GX and Hades 2, I never spent a whole lot of time on either. I just played enough to garner the employee to give me my check for the passport. I will say though that the wireless GameCube controller definitely feels extremely comfortable. The base of the controller looks and feels a little different, but the back of the controller where your hands rest feels like the Smash Ultimate and Smash 4 GameCube controllers. ZL, Share, Home, Pairing, and C buttons have all been added to the top of the controller too, which are pretty good additions to make the controller on par with other Switch 1 and Switch 2 controllers. Hades 2 was also pretty enjoyable for what little time I did play of it. I never played the first Hades, so it took a minute to get used to exactly what I was doing, but I have played other roguelikes before, so I understood what I had to do, like I knew what the objective was. This was the last game I ended up playing before my time session ended. I ended up checking my watch and asked the employee if the demo was timed, because, well, I needed to leave where my play session's time was up. She was like, I'm not really gonna kick you out, so you can keep going. I'm not authorized to do that. And I ended up playing for like another 15 minutes after that, so God bless. And the last game I wanted to talk about is, of course, Kirby and the Forgotten Land plus Starcross World. This was the second game I was the most excited to play at the event, to nobody's surprise. I haven't been paying close attention to any coverage of the game at all, really. I've mostly been focused on Mario Kart World, so I was kind of going in blind to this. Now, I saw the trailer footage and the opening cutscene, of course, but I never knew what the demo consisted of. As soon as I walked up to the booth and set up my tripod, the worker there pulled up and she was like, hey, welcome to the Kirby booth. Did you play the original? I was like, oh yeah, it's easily one of my favorite games of the decade and completely took control of my life back in 2022. She agreed with me and was like, alright, I won't explain the controls to you then. That was a nice little interaction before everything got set up. As for what the demo consisted of though, I briefly saw the opening cutscene of when Kirby and Elflin return to the Forgotten Land, presumably after the ending of the main campaign. It's here where we see this crystal meteor heart fall from the sky and break open, causing a bunch of smaller meteorites to fall towards the land. The demo opens on 1-1, Point of Arrival, now renamed to Meteor Shower's Arrival. The stage roughly plays the same as the original, this time lacking some enemies and tutorials. Once you get to the opening shot of the overgrown skyscraper, we see as a meteor crashes into the side of it and begins to warp the environment around it, encasing everything in proximity into a crystal. It's here where Starcross World's identity begins to show, and how different some level formats will be in this campaign. I believe that Starcross World is Forgotten Land's EX mode. While some may argue that Isolated Isles Forgo Dreams was the game's EX mode, I believe that Starcross World will actually be more of a traditional EX mode, switching up level structure, remixed and more challenging sub-bosses and main bosses, new copy abilities, potentially, and new Malfa modes, along with others that will eventually culminate in a brand new final boss fight. But we really don't know a whole lot of what Starcross World's campaign, or just this brand new Nintendo Switch 2 version, has to offer besides newly structured levels, new mouthful modes, and new sub-bosses for the moment. We really haven't been shown much at all. And I know the game comes out in August, but still. Collectible Waddle Dees from the main campaign have been replaced by Starries, these new ethereal beings that spawn from the meteor. I'm not going to go full analysis on these guys and their purpose in this video, but I do think that they'll have a higher significance in the overall story. Visuals look amazing, of course. I'm so glad that this game runs in 4K 60 frames now. It already looked great on Switch 1, but on Switch 2 it just looks stunning. The new Spring Mouthful mode plays like a better Spring Mario from Super Mario Galaxy. You can bounce high up and control yourself midair while also being able to slam back down. Missions obviously return, at least 5 per level starting off, which is subject to change in later worlds. I was constantly pausing and checking to see if I was up to date on my missions, but as I approached the end of the level, I noticed that I actually never 100%ed it. Little disappointing, but no biggie. I'm very excited to see where this campaign goes, and to see if every single level in the game will feature this brand new makeover, or if it will only be a select few. As for my overall thoughts on the event itself, it honestly was just really cool attending one of these for the first time, especially where I never attended anything as bombastic as E3 or any sort of really like special Nintendo events. It really did feel like something special, even if it was for only like a really small amount of time. I think the games they showed off were great, giving first hands-on impressions with some highly anticipated titles such as Metroid Prime 4 and Mario Kart World, while also allowing the public to test out the new console and new gimmicks that accompany it, such as mouse mode. As for the things I never liked or things I wish could have been there, I really wish that Mario Kart World and DK Bananza were accessible to play on the free play show floor, because I was really looking forward to play more Mario Kart, of course, but they only limited us to roughly 15 to 20 minutes of gameplay. I'm not certain if other locations around the world offered those two games in their free play zones, but regardless, I was really looking forward to spending the majority of my time slot at a Mario Kart booth. The merchandise we got was only really the bag and the lanyard. I was expecting a bit more, to be honest. Maybe a keychain, socks, pens, I don't know. Maybe this is a bit of a stretch. I'm still grateful for what I got. We weren't even allowed to keep the game passport that came with the lanyard. Obviously, I understand why though. It's to prevent you from going back in and claiming another backpack, but it still would have been nice to have as a keepsake, I think. I was lucky to keep my cousin's, as he never really played many of the games, so they allowed him to keep his, where he only had like one stamp. Besides that, I have generally positive thoughts about the event. I hope that there will potentially be more of these down the road during the Switch 2's life, hopefully with more North American and Canadian locations than just Toronto, but hey, who knows. If you have any questions or thoughts on any of the upcoming games, then sound off in the comments. I would love to hear them. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed today's video, and with that, this is Xwood64 signing off.